Muchas gracias por estar aquí, gracias por estar en YouTube, gracias por estar en este momento acá en el canal. Te pido de todo corazón que te suscribas y des el like porque nos estás apoyando de una manera pero muy grande. Vamos.
Now, it's been 7 years since our last go around in one of the most story fighting games of our time. And now we're back at it with
7 años.
Tekken 8. And here to get us all caught up is game director at Bandai Namco, Katsuhiro Harada, and Tekken producer Michael Murray. How are you all doing? Thank you all so much for joining us.
Ahí están los dos divos. Estos son los divos, hermano. O sea, no sueltan nada, ¿sí o no? Los divos de Tekken, loco.
Now, we have some very specific questions that I'm pretty sure all the fans are excited to hear the answers to. So I'm going to start with my first one here. You've been demoing Tekken 8 to both press and fighting fans, and I wonder what kind of feedback have you been getting about the game, and has that feedback led to any substantial gameplay changes?
まず総じてゲーム自体はとても
So we've been demoing the game, like you said, and actually the response was overwhelmingly positive, almost scarily so.
Todas las personas le han dado feedback positivo, que hasta se asusta.
You know,
Ya.
we're comparing this to back in the day when we used
Ya.
to do location tests in the arcades, and players would have this notebook that they could use to write comments about the game and
Qué
feedback.
interesante que antes le
And a
entregaron
lot of
una,
times, you know,
como una
that was
libreta para llevar
very,
apuntes.
critical because the people who were there were the hardest core of the players in Tekken. So compared to that, yeah, surprisingly good. But there were a few things we noticed, not necessarily from the verbal feedback that they gave, but watching them play the game. We noticed that one of the new mechanics this time around, the heat system, was something that they weren't fully grasping as quickly as we liked. So we thought we wanted to do something to kind of adjust the learning curve there, to make it so that they could pick it up much quicker.
Qué increíble, loco. Qué increíble. Que supuestamente que el hit mode, que es como la estrella de oro del juego, la gente no la estaba captando, no la estaba ocupando bien.
So there is that. We made some changes to that because of the feedback.
Speaking of which, what specific changes have you made regarding the heat system?
まあ、具体的に言うと、
So about the
A
heat
ver, ¿cuáles
system,
fueron
Kate,
esto es importante. A ver, ¿cuáles fueron los cambios que se hicieron respecto
regarding the heat
al
system.
¿qué dice?
まあ、具体的に言
Respecto
う
al
と
hit.
So about the heat system, in case you're not familiar with it, you know, the main theme of the game this time around is aggressive fighting style.
O sea, van a hacer que seas agresivo,
So
sí o
to
sí.
kind of emphasize that, we added this new heat state, and what this is there's two methods that you can use to enter the state. And you can choose to do
Dos
so
métodos
by
para entrar,
going
ya.
directly into it, using the heat burst, where you just push a button and instantly you're in the state. Or you can, there's certain moves for each character that when you hit your opponent with them, it allows you to enter the state as well.
Qué
Obviously, there's
bueno.
more advantage to
Me
hitting your
encanta,
opponent with
loco.
the heat engager, is what the move's called, rather than going directly, because you get more time in the heat state that way. But previously, if you notice on the bottom, the health gauge, where the heat energy is, there used to be kind of like these chains representing almost these stocks.
Aquí antes te salían claramente dos chain, o como dos 8, o como dos cadenas, ¿verdad? Como las cadenas del ADN. Y ahora ya no están, mira, las sacaron.
And so, depending on if you had one or two, the things you could do were a little bit different. And it wasn't necessarily that straightforward to the players, so we wanted to streamline it. So we got rid of the heat energy
Ciao.
in the meaning of the stocks and just has the gauge. So it's much more simplified, and you can also tell right away what you're able to do. And when you're in the heat state, there's also this kind of very cinematic sequence of attacks that each character is unique to each character.
Qué
called the heat
buena, me
smash.
encanta.
And so it used to be that the command for this technique was different for each character, but we've
Sí.
also made that just one button.
Antes era diferente para todos entrar a usar el hit. Y ahora no, hermano, va a ser con un botón para todos.
To kind of, you know, simplify it across the
Ahora la gente que configura botones va a tener un botón menos para poder configurar.
roster. So those are some of the major changes we've made as a result.
You mentioned aggressive players, so do you think Tekken 8 kind of caters more to aggressive players or
¡Qué
defensive
buena la
players,
pregunta!
given the gaming mechanics?
まあ、この、まあ、非常に興味
That's an interesting question. It's a quite a deep one. So we first need to kind of start off on the kind of basis of the philosophy there. So many people might not think this way, but if you look at fighting games, they're different when you think of defense and offense than
Correcto.
other versus online games. So in other games, when you attack your opponent, most of the time the damage is done if they're in the space when you're attacking. But for
Ya.
fighting games, you can block attacks, right? So
Sí.
that can totally negate the damage of the attack, which is already makes it kind of skewed to defensive capabilities in that result. And when you're thinking of not just fighting games in general, but Tekken is a 3D fighting game. So in addition to blocking, you can also do sidestepping to evade your opponent's attacks, making it even more skewed towards defensive capabilities. So this new mechanic and the aggressive that we're talking about means that we just wanted to add a certain time that it's limited, obviously, where in which a player can more easily open up their opponent and enjoy going on the offense, and to actually motivate players to be more offensive rather than turtling up or running away, because it's actually quite fun when you actually go on the fence and try it out, and it's a lot more fun for spectators who are watching the game as well. So
Ahí estaba, hermano. ¿Por qué no dicen directamente que el juego quieren el hit para que tanto los que juegan ofensivos puedan ser más ofensivos y el que esté mirando sea más interesante para él? Díganlo con todas sus palabras, ¿no, hermano? Pero tanta explicación. Si eso es lo que quieren ellos, que tú te tires encima a pegar todo el rato. Tal
those
cual.
were not just the players themselves, but people watching the game via live streams
¿Viste?
or esports or
Tal
whatever
cual.
is something we had to take into account as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely always on the defense, so I'm gonna have to not turtle up, as you say, and run away.
Oh,
Now,
tremendo.
historically,
Oye, se la dijo, pero ¿viste, hermano? Le dijo que él, claro, ahí están los subtítulos. Le dijo que él siempre ha jugado defensivo, entonces ahora va a tener que jugar como ellos dicen. Eso le quiso decir.
always on the defense, so I'm gonna have to not turtle up, as you say, and run away.
Total up es jugar defensivo.
Now, historically, let's talk about like the cabinets that we that Tekken usually comes out with. Like Tekken has been a game where they've been released on arcade cabinets with the
Qué
console
interesante.
version coming out later. Things are a little bit different right now. So can you describe why the change with Tekken 8?
いくつかポイントありましたね。
Qué interesante que sí, antes todo era arcade, hermano. Y los asiáticos siempre tenían todo primero porque Japón, Corea, arcades, ahí ya, pero ahora ya no. Así que aquí viene la explicación.
もともと、やっぱりおっしゃったように一番大きい
Well, there's actually a variety of reasons for the change. It is a major change in the history, as you mentioned. This is the first time we're actually starting off with console. And there were several reasons why we're doing this. One of the major ones, obviously, is just the state of the arcades worldwide. Previously, they were everywhere in the U.S.,
Todos lados,
in
hermano.
Europe, Asia, etc. And then they started declining, right? But the speed of the decline in the West, the U.S. and Europe, was much, much faster than that of Asia. So probably around Tekken 5, which was like 2005 or so.
O sea, en Tekken 5 ellos ya se dieron cuenta de que Tekken en arcade iba en picada, hermano. Qué triste. Ahora va a sentir la cabeza de la tortuga.
Was
Correcto.
when we started to see a noticeable difference there. And what happens as a result is when you started to not see arcades anymore in the West, but only in Asia, when we were doing an arcade-only release first and then jump to console, that
Correcto.
meant that the players in the West were having to wait for 2 years to get
2
the chance
años
to
había
game.
que esperar,
So
hermano.
the start line for people in Asia and those outside of Asia was different.
Correcto.
Which
2
wasn't,
años, hermano.
a
Él lo
great
dijo.
thing for many reasons. And then another is just a simple internal matter that since then our company has changed the organization so that the arcade guys are actually a separate company from the console division, which Harada and I are in. So
¿Alguien leyó lo último o entendió lo último, hermano? Que es súper ultra importante. Nunca pensé escucharlo.
actually a separate company from the organization so that the arcade guys are actually a separate company from
Ahora la compañía de arcades son una compañía separada de ellos, que es Harada y Murray, que ahora se dedican a las consolas, mira.
the console division, which Harada and I are in. So
En la cual Harada y yo estamos dentro.
many kind of elements went into that decision, but the first two are probably the biggest ones.
So that means that it's ending with Tekken 7, which is the final arcade cabinet. right?
Pero qué buena pregunta. Pero esa es una entrevista, hermano. Así, directa al hueso. Directa. Pregúntale lo que hay que preguntar. Pero IGN, hermano, o IGN, te felicito. Gracias. Pero tremendas preguntas, loco. Está bien. Mientras otros preguntan puras cagadas. O sea, Tekken 7 va a ser el último Tekken en arcade. Se lo preguntan nomás. Nada de cosas aquí. Si hay que preguntar las cosas, bro. Ahí está. ¿Y qué le dicen?
At least for the arcade first release.
Yes. Well, fortunately, here in the IGN office, we have a Tekken 7 cabinet.
Yeah,
I saw it.
And I have this. If Harada-san can do us the pleasure of
Ellos
signing
tienen
after
una
our
máquina
interview.
arcade, loco, y nosotros...
Yes, yes. Awesome. All right, now my final question. Now the next close network tests for Tekken start.
¿Qué pasó con los subtítulos? Ya, yo traduzco.
Yes. Awesome. All right, now my final question.
Ahora, mi última pregunta.
Now the next close network tests.
Dice que ahora la Close Network Test, la que vamos a probar nosotros, si es que nos la ganamos, hermano, en una de esas, quién sabe, papá.
For Tekken start July 21st.
Empieza en julio 21.
And again on the week of the 28th.
Ahí
Can
salieron.
fans expect to experience? What can they expect to experience, like regarding like stages, characters, competitive gameplay, etc.? What can we expect?
キャラクターは16体だったね。
So we actually had the closed alpha test at several events. I think Combo Breaker was the one in a big tournament in the U.S. We had some in Europe and Asia as well, where limited people who were actually participating in the tournament that day could, for Tekken 7, could check out the game. So this is the first time we're actually opening up to a broader audience. And so for the closed network test, we have two different dates, as you mentioned. The first one will be on the PS5 only.
Lo cual me parece, pero extrañísimo. Solamente la primera sea para PlayStation 5. Ojo. Y después que venga PC y Xbox y PlayStation 5 nuevamente. Eso quiere decir que el juego se está haciendo para PlayStation 5. Directamente, así, sin rodeos te la dijeron. Y después, obviamente, de PlayStation 5 es el port a Xbox y PC.
We'll have 16 characters available, which is a decent size. And that's
16 personajes disponibles. Mira, 16. Escucha ahora. Ahora viene la parte importante. Ahora viene la parte que te va a dar esperanzas. Mira, a ti, a todos los que están mirando ahí. Ahora viene lo que tú esperabas escuchar.
just for this time, obviously when we
Solo por esta vez van a haber 16 personajes.
release the game, it's going to have a lot more characters.
Una vez que lancemos el juego, vamos a tener muchos más personajes que esos. O sea, yo dije 30, es el doble. 16, 30. El doble, papá. Acuérdate de mí, por ahí va, por 30.
That, but just for the test, there'll also be about 5 stages, and you'll be able to
5 escenarios, no está mal, hermano, no está mal. Solo hay una respuesta a eso, Trooper. Japón es prioridad. Sí, correcto. Prioridad y por eso lo están desarrollando para la Play primero.
play all the new mechanics we're talking about, and the changes we made to the heat system as well will be reflected in that build.
Pero perfecto, bro, si eso era lo que había que hacer. O sea, la diferencia, o llamémoslo así, los cambios que le hicieron al hit vienen en la revisión que vamos a probar si es que nos la ganamos. Acuérdense, acuérdate, bro, tú, yo, el que se la gane, por favor.
Not only that, the second date you mentioned is when we're going to be opening it up to crossplay between PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, S.
No lo había pensado. Yo sé que tú tampoco lo habías pensado. No lo habías pensado, hermano. ¿Entendiste la última parte? Yo no se me había pasado ni por la mente. O sea, lo que te están queriendo decir, en pocas palabras, es que tú la primera semana no vas a poder jugar crossplay. El tío del arcade en Japón se quedará sin negocio. O ahora se dedicará a alquilar PS5. Sí, hermano. Si tú postulaste o participaste por la PlayStation 5 o la beta y te la ganas la primera semana, vas a poder jugar solamente contra PlayStation 5, lo cual no se me había ocurrido, no, me pilló de sorpresa esto. Y lo que se la ganen después, porque yo creo que van a ser sorteos separados. O sea, si te la ganaste la primera vez, no vas a poder participar la segunda. Y si es así, mala suerte. Los que se la ganen la segunda, ellos van a poder participar entre todos, PS5, Xbox y Steam. Y si tú te la ganaste en la primera, solamente versus los de PS5. La pregunta es, aquí en Chile, por ejemplo, donde vivo yo, ¿cuántas personas tienen PlayStation 5 y han postulado a la beta de Tekken 8? Triste, hermano. Triste porque si no hay ¿cuántos? 10, con suerte ponele, 10. En cambio en PC, toda la gente juega Tekken 7 en PC. Por lo tanto, es como obvio que la mayoría va a estar en PC, hermano. Qué triste por ese lado. Bueno, pero qué bueno porque si te la ganas y ve tú a saber.
And PC. So that'll be something the first time that people actually get a chance to check out not just the network play, but crossplay as well. So we're looking forward to that.
¿Ves?
I think we're all looking forward to it. This is really exciting. Harada-san, Michael, I want to thank you both so much. We're going to go...